Wednesday, February the 5th. Lake level is right about 914.5, same thing it's been for the last couple weeks. Water temperatures anywhere from frozen to maybe as high as 40 degrees. It's just been a really extremely cold winter. As far as fishing, I went out for a couple hours. Sunday started snowing. I kept looking at the boat ramp and thought I better get the heck off the water before I couldn't get out of there. But there was a local tournament Saturday. There wasn't too many people because of the weather. I think they had about 18 or 20 boats, but it took almost 24 pounds to win, and it took 20 pounds to get a check. Most of the guys I talked to seemed to be pretty much A-rig and a few spoonfish. But what I'm going to talk about a little bit this week is I'm going to show you how to, rig up a drop shot rig, what type of rod and line I'm using, and the different applications we use it in. A lot of times people think of the drop shot as just as a deep vertical presentation, but it's really a pretty versatile rig. We use it throughout the year, and not just so much for vertical fishing. We use it in places like Carolina rigging, split shot, and in different situations. But the basic drop shot rig, when we're vertical fishing, I like to use anywhere from a 6.5 to a 7-foot rod, pretty limber rod. About 99% of all my drop shotting is done on a spinning rod. Now I will use a bait caster when I'm sight fishing, and I'll get into that rig here in a little bit. But the main rig, like I say, is I want a medium action rod, and I usually use 6 to 8 pound line. And I prefer to use monofilament over fluorocarbon, mainly because the memory that fluorocarbon has. Especially in this extreme cold, the monofilament's a lot more manageable. Something I am a big believer in is Real Magic, whether it be this brand or the brand that Bass Pro has, which is KVD line spray. They both work real well, and it helps keep a lot of that memory and twist out of the line. Basically, you just spray it on your reel, and the line absorbs it. But what I've got here is I've got a little swivel about 18 inches up above my hook. Then I've got my circle drop shot hook, about 16 inches of line my weight. Now, the swivel, you don't have to have. That just helps keep some of the twist out of the line. If you're using braid, which I'm not real big on braid or nanofill for drop shot, and I have been playing with it some, but what you could do is right here where your swivel is, tie your braid here, then tie about a 6 or 8 foot piece of monofilament or fluorocarbon for your leader, and tie your drop shot. Now the hook I'm going to use, one little thing here too, you notice where I'm hooking that weight in on the rod. These are pretty slick little deals for holding a drop shot, and you can also hook regular lures in there as well. And what that is, that's an easy keeper that Fuji makes. I don't know, like $2-3. It's got a little O-ring, you put it around the end of the rod. It's a pretty slick deal. It's a good way to keep the drop shot tied up. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to tie a drop shot rig, and I'm going to use a little bit different hook. I'm going to use a number 2 offset worm hook. And I'll tell you why I'm putting this hook on this rig here in just a sec. But what you're going to do is just tie a regular Palomar knot, which you're going to put the line through the eye twice. Get you about 16, 18 inches of line. Just do an overhand knot. Then you put the hook back through the loop. And if I'm going too fast for you, you can just Google a polymer knot online, and it'll show you in slow motion how to tie it. You want to keep the knot, right up together so you got no loose lines. Wet it, snug it up. Now the most important part of the tying this Palomar knot on this drop shot rig is you want to take the tag end of the line, slide it back through the eyelet from the, let me just straighten that out, from the hook side. Slide it in one more time, pull it through. Now what that does it keeps that hook pointed up all the time. So if you're vertical fishing, it keeps that hook pointed up. You don't want that hook pointed down or to the side, because you want to be able to hook the fish right in the roof of the mouth. But whether I'm fishing it vertically or I'm casting it and working it back, that hook is always going to be pointed up. And several different types of drop shot weights you can use. I usually use the round ones. There are cylinder ones which work well too, but I've had good luck with the round ones. It's got a little deal where your line just cinches right up in there. You don't have to tie a knot on it. Okay, now the hook I normally use when I'm vertical fishing, as far as, you know, deep fishing for drop shot fish, is a little circle hook or octopus hook. It's a number 2 hook. A lot of different people make them. You know, Gamakatsu makes them. Mustad, Older makes them. And the weight, like I say, everybody and their brother makes a weight. You know, Bass Pro's got a weight. A lot of the weights don't even have names. You just find them at the local package store. Local people will pour them up. Now the hooks, most of the time I like to fish the drop shot with an open hook. Now if I am in some treetops, I will rig it weedless. And you'll notice here, I've got this rigged up weedless. And what I've got, this is a 1/0 hook that Mustad makes, and it's got a little metal keeper right up on the end of it, right by the eyelet, where it'll hold your plastic so that you can rig it up weedless. Like I say, most of the time, if I can get by with an open hook, I like to fish an open hook. But this is a good setup if I'm in the treetops or if I'm around the brush piles. Now, on this particular rod, I do have this on braid or nanofill, which Berkley makes. And I've got about an 8-foot monofilament leader, and where I tie the monofilament to the nanofill, I've tried lots of different knots. There's the uni knot, the blood knot. A lot of them are really complicated to tie when you're out there on the water when the wind's blowing. I found one that I've had real good luck with. It's called a surgeon's knot. I can tie it in the boat, you know, pretty quick. So if you're interested in tying monofilament or fluorocarbon to braid, check out the surgeon's knot online. Now, like I say, you know, most people just think of the drop shot rig as a vertical presentation over deep water. When these fish in the springtime start moving into spawn, a lot of us throw a split shot rig, a Mojo rig, or a Carolina rig. Now, next week we'll get into that as far as how to rig that up. But basically, I'll throw a drop shot rig. A lot of places people throw a Carolina rig. And, you know, this is a rig that you can work even down the ledges on some bluffs. You know, they got timber on it. You can rig it up weedless. You will get the weight stuck sometimes in the rocks, but the good thing about the weight is if it gets stuck, it'll usually break off. You don't lose your whole rig. You can rig up another bait. A lot of times when you've been on Table Rock and Bull Shoals in the spring, the moss and the algae gets real bad for a brief period of time. You know, up until the water gets real warm. And it's almost impossible to fish a bait on the bottom. Well, this will work real good then, because the weight will stay on the bottom, but the bait will stay up off of it to keep the moss off of it. When the fish come in to start spawning, you know, a lot of the fish that you're catching on a jig, on a split shot or a Carolina rig, those fish are actually bedding. And in this deep, clear water, these fish will sometimes bed 8, 10, 12 feet. And you can't see them, and what you're actually doing is dragging that bait across to your bed. Well, this is a pretty slick setup for that as well. You know, the weight's kind of stirring up a little the rocks, making a little commotion, and then your little bait comes by. Now, most all the baits that we use, you know, drop shotting is kind of a finesse tactic where, you know, there's been a lot of fishing pressure. The fish aren't real active. So most of the worms that we usually use, like that was a Zoom 4-inch finesse worm. This is a Zoom swamp crawler. We use kind of like a do-nothing worm, worms that don't have a lot of action. You can take and use like a fish doctor, 4-inch centipede or French fry. And you know, there's a lot of different baits you can use, but like I say, we usually use a straight tail worm. Now, one of the other things, like I said, 90-something% of the time, 99% of the time, I will use a spinning rod. But when the fish are bedding, I'll actually rig it up on a bait caster. There's no reason for light line. You know, I'll use 15, 20-pound line. And I've got an offset #1 worm hook on it. And I'll put a 1/2 ounce weight on the bottom. And instead of using the 16 or 18 inch leader, I'll shorten it up quite a bit and go to about an 8 or 10 inch. And then the baits I'll use will be different. A lot of times I'll use like a lizard or a little speed craw or even a critter craw. And a lot of times I'll use white so that I can see it. But what works out good with the drop shot rig when you're sight fishing is it allows you to keep the bait on the bed. If you've got a regular bait that you're flipping in there, every time you're twitching it, you're moving it off of the bed. And what a person's got to do is find that sweet spot on the bed. And with the heavy weight and about an 8, your bait up about 8 or 10 inches, you can actually get the weight like right on the edge of the bed and just let that bait just kind of sink right down into that sweet spot in front of the fish. And it enables you to shake the bait, move it around without pulling it off of the bed. So it's a pretty slick setup for sight fishing as well. As far as the reels on the drop shot, I'm using the Lew's, the Team Lew's Gold, and the new Team Lew's Speed Spin that they both come out with. Excellent reels, nice drags, real smooth reels. Now the lower end reels will work as well, but the more you spend for a reel, you should get a lot better quality, and that's what you get in these higher end Lew's. They're just awesome feeling reels. So I hope that helps you out a little bit on your drop shot techniques. Don't use it just for shallow water, for deep water only. It's a good shallow water presentation. You can fish it around docks, around structure. It's not a very good technique for trying to flip in docks because it'll get tangled up, and it's not a bait that you can skip. But working on the outside perimeters of them, you'll find it real successful, especially in the springtime. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.